Hello, everyone. My name is Michael McFall. I'm a professor of political science, a Hoover Fellow, and the director of the Freeman Spogli Institute for International Studies here at Stanford. And I want to welcome you all to this truly historic event at our campus. And in particular, and most importantly, I want to welcome back to Stanford President Zelensky. He's coming. Woo!
Hello, good afternoon.
Woo!
It's a great pleasure. Thank you.
Забагато для мене.
There's too much of applause for me.
Mr. President, great to see you again. I want to thank you for three things before we get started. First, I want to thank you for honoring our Stanford community with your presence today. As we discussed in September when you visited, you know that Stanford has a long history of engagement with Ukraine. In the last 2 decades, we've had 225 Ukrainians through our various training programs, mostly run through FSI. And many of them work for you now, Mr. President. Many of our alums now work for you. We also have many Ukrainian students here with us today. And if I could ask the Ukrainian students, please stand up and say hello to President Zelensky. Second, Mr. President, I want to thank you, your warriors, and all Ukrainians for leading the fight for democracy, freedom, and sovereignty, and against tyranny, repression, and imperialism, not only in Ukraine, but for the entire free world. In the fight between democracy and dictatorship, colonialism and independence, and good and evil, no nation in the world is doing more. No nation in the world is sacrificing more than Ukrainians. And third and finally, Mr. President, I want to thank you personally for inspiring me personally. In these dark times in Ukraine, around the world, and even here, yes, in my own country, we need heroes. You are a hero, Mr. President, not just for Ukraine, not just for Europe, but for the entire world. So, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming back to Stanford a friend of our university, a leader in the fight for freedom, and a global hero, President Zelensky.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you.
Дуже приємно.
It's a great pleasure to hear so many warm words. I'm very grateful for all those words. It's a great honor for me. And I believe those words should go not only to me, but to our country, to military, to people, all those who assist, who defend the sovereignty, the freedom, and our independence. It is an honor for me to deliver a statement to you and to have a conversation with you, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends. It's a great honor for the second time to have a chance to address your community, the community of the Stanford University, to students, to professors, to all the Americans who feel support, who are feeling nervous because of our fight for freedom. I'm grateful for your interest and for so many sincere, good viewpoints and expressions that I can see. I can see people in front of us. I can see people who are not wearing armored proof vests, who are not wearing helmets, you're not in the bomb shelters. There's no wounded among you, wounded as the result of enemy shellings, and I'm happy because of that. I'm happy for you. And this meeting won't be interrupted by the air raid siren because California is not endangered by the Russian missiles. Unfortunately, this is not the case for Ukraine. And since September previous year, when I was doing my first visit to Stanford, a lot has changed. But at the same time, much has remained the same. As I've told at that time, Ukraine is the country where everything is possible. That was the case. Now, the whole world knows that in Ukraine, even more than possible. Ukraine is the country who destroyed the myth about the enormous capabilities of the Russian forces. Many thought that Russian forces can conquer anyone if they only want to. But Ukraine, as well as the Ukrainian army, continue to wage war, which Russia is not willing to stop. And Russia is trying to occupy the whole country, but still we feel enough forces to think about the future Ukraine that would be open to the whole world. In between of September of last year and the May of this year, our society has survived so many challenges that I wouldn't wish any other nations to have. Still, we will need to take another path. From the May of this year till the September, I know that this will be a very difficult path, a painful path. And during that period, the young people will not be looking at the professors, at their colleagues, but they will be looking at their comrades in the trenches and the enemies that they can see through the sights of the weapons or through the UAVs. But I also know that for Ukraine, at this path, there will definitely be a stage after which a peace will come. Now I'm using the words that everyone is reading, everyone is hearing through mass media, in books. This is fight for freedom, myth, Russian army, war, trenches, path, peace. Every single word is clear and understandable, but if I wonder if you feel the profound meaning of those words. Yesterday, Russian forces have shelled the largest city of ours in the east of Ukraine, and they were using the MLRS as well as the heavy artillery, large caliber artillery called Pion. And Russian army was shelling the residential buildings. There was not a single military facility. As the result of that shelling and other shellings, 9 people were killed, civilians, and a family with the newly born baby of 6 months old were under shelling. The father was killed, the baby was killed, the mother was heavily wounded, and we are receiving similar messages for 90 days already, starting from the 24th of February. And over the 8 years starting since 2014. This is what is happening in Ukraine. For everyone currently studying in Stanford, they know what the question, what matters most to you and why? In order to study at your university, you would need to write an essay answering that question. And I'm sure that over the years of the history of Stanford, I'm sure there was a lot of essays written, a lot of answers given, and over the past 8 years, there were a lot of marvelous students in your university. I guess among those students were those who survived the war, and their answers to the question, what matters more to you and why, their answers were different from the answers of those who were successful enough to live in peace. And now I'm not saying about the quality of the text, I'm talking about the emotions, the feelings, and the words of every specific person. Now, since the beginning of the full-scale war, we in Ukraine, we have a special ceremony, a decoration ceremony for our defenders, for those who has done the most, for those who received a title of the hero of Ukraine. This is a special gratitude. There's a special room in the presidential building, and we've used this room to welcome the leaders of the other countries, the presidents, the heads of government. And now I'm using that room to decorate the heroes of Ukraine, or I'm giving that decoration to the relatives of the person, if that person has died as the result of the fighting. Just recently, I've decorated a pilot of our combat aviation. He was killed during the fights for Ukraine. And when I gave his golden star, his decoration to his wife, I told her the words of condolences. The condolences for the fact that her husband was killed. And she started crying. She said that he he kept flying for 30 years in the air, and he remains in the air. And I felt that the death did not conquer that family, those people. Her husband remained in the air, in the sky, and she considers him still living, but in the skies, and that will always the case. And these words, the sky, the death, the hero, for her, for her husband, for me, for you, it's all different. Even so, those words sound equally to us, but that profoundness, that distance, that feelings, truly, they matter a lot. It explains why we, on the 93rd day of war, why do we need to say about further escalation of sanctions against Russia, to have sufficient sanctions against Russia so they would start finally seeking for peace? Why should we explain too much? Why is it so difficult to coordinate with our partners the issue of supplying weapons to Ukraine, even though they're willing to support this? There's a lot of questions. And in fact, that is one of the questions why that you should answer in your essay. And I'm answering your question and the question that you usually raise for longer than these 93 days, when I'm trying to give my country everything necessary to be able to defend our freedom and finally win. What matters most to me and why? We know that
I don't know whether
I don't know
any
whether the
presidents of
presidents
the
of the
states
countries
ever
have
answered
answered
this
this
question, the
question.
states fighting for their freedom. But here's my answer to this, a pragmatic one. The weapons that can help us overcome the might of the Russian army, the sanctions that will stop the flow of money used for the Russian terror finance, to maintain social normalcy in Ukraine during the war, blocking and confiscation of all the Russian assets in the international jurisdictions to be used for reconstruction, to restore things destroyed by this army, a fair tribunal for the war criminals who killed, who raped, who tortured, and deported our citizens. The updated a lively architecture of security which will prevent any such wars for the future in the world and complete restoration of normal, peaceful life in our country so that our people, our students, students like you, can have free and safe communication with presidents of democratic countries. For Ukrainians and both genders, not to mm, think about where shelter is, because they won't need uh, any air defense alerts. They won't know the signal, the sound of it. The words and the depth of them should be equal for everyone who is a decision maker when it comes to assistance to Ukraine. Many Ukrainians recently learned about one of our boys, a little boy from Mariupol, from the place which was overrun by Russians, totally devastated. Before, in the evacuation, that boy was very grateful to all the people who play hosts for his family and all the dwellers of Mariupol. He wanted to somehow reciprocate, and he invited everyone to visit him in Mariupol. He said, next summer, come to us in Mariupol. He said, yes, there is no town, but the sea is still there. And this story is about life, the life always winning over death, and that matters most for everyone. And this is a story about a human being that is still sincere and grateful in the most horrific circumstances because it's a free person. And I believe that Ukrainians, having been tested by this war, will still be sincere, grateful, free. And I'm sure that after this war, something will change in relations between the American people and Ukrainian people. It's changing already. We have become much closer in our feelings. We know that we have the same thing in mind when we mention freedom. When I came back to Ukraine last September, I was really inspired. I was thinking about all those things that we could do together. But now I have the same elation because I can see your eyes, and I believe that many of you will indeed visit Ukraine, help Ukraine with the reconstruction after the war, because this is the biggest project for freedom, and your generation will take its crucial part in it. Our citizen towns are devastated, our sea is blocked, but we remain free. And in conclusion, I would like to say that on the 24th of February, the full-fledged war against Ukraine started, and 18-year-old Russian boys entered our countries, our homes, to kill, to torture, to rape. This is difficult to understand, the reason of it. And on the 24th of May, 3 months later exactly, in Texas, a 18-year-old boy entered a school to kill 19 children, 19 kids, and 2 adults. This is impossible to understand at all. This is a tragedy. And we are living in those terrible times when American people express their condolences because of the death in Ukraine at war, and we express our condolences because of death is in peace. Accept my condolences, please. Every day, we have not just put another question to oneself, but to find the answer to it. Who matters most and why? This is the most important question to me. Who matters most and why? Take care of yourselves, of your relatives, of your friends, of the world. Thank you, the United States. Glory be to Ukraine.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much indeed.
Mr. President, we know you're very busy. You have lots to do, but I know you've also agreed to take some questions from our students. We have 2 microphones here in each place, and so that the president can see you, we can't move the microphone around. So if you could just line up there. Oh, lots of people have already lined up, Mr. President. You have lots of questions. Let's start over here first, and then we'll just rotate back and forth. And if you could introduce yourself to President Zelensky, that would be great.
Hi, President Zelensky. Great to meet you. My name is Shay. What have you found to have inspired people during the crisis? From a pandemic to a war, how have you been able to tap into the deeply rooted patriotism of your citizens?
У мене не було жодного виходу іншого.
I had no choice, you see. I'm a president of this state, and this is part of my job. Even when it is difficult for me personally, I have to show that regardless of such difficulties, everything is going to be okay, and we'll find the way out of this situation. I inspire people, and people inspire me. Just believe me, I'm another human being just like you. I have just a different job, this job, but I'm very happy that I have this test and I have this trust to enjoy. Perhaps you expected to hear something else, but this is my answer.
Over here, Nariman, please.
Mr. President, Володимир Олександровичу, насамперед хочу подякувати вам
Mr.
за
Zelensky, I would
мужність,
like to thank you for your
стійкість.
courage.
Ви буквально в бою довели, що ви
bravery,
гідні бути
And
президентом
you
України,
are a real warrior
Верховним головнокомандуючим
of the,
Збройних сил України,
country.
лідером незламного українського народу.
At war,
I
you're the
believe
leader
that
of the
this war
unbreakable
will
Ukrainian
end in
nation.
victory of Ukraine.
A-
However, other issues will arise after the war. To restore Ukraine, you will have to strengthen the power vertical and make unpopular decisions. Some political opponents will use it against you. Such a struggle, as history shows, leads to restrictions on rights and freedoms. How will you, as a person who has a great chance to win the next presidential elections, will be able to ensure the democratic future of post-war Ukraine? Thank you.
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much. You know,
Кожна сім'я, абсолютно.
every family, absolutely every family, every one of us, we are paying an enormous price for this war. For some people, it's too much. Some people sacrificed their children who lost their lives fighting for Ukraine. Some people are internally displaced persons. Some people went even abroad. And some people are divided by the border, the mental border, because there were some people, and you know, as our citizen, I can hear this listening to your English.
І когось
And some people are divided mentally because you know that in the east of our country, the most powerful missile blasts were there. The Russian-speaking people would always say that we could reconcile with Russia, that they were our neighbors. Many of them called them brothers and sisters before the war. So that was an explosion in the minds, in the heads, because the majority of people killed there by the Russian missile in the east were living in the part of Ukraine where the Russian-speaking population was supposed to be protected, and they ruined the families of those Russian-speaking people. That's why all of us, we are paying the price, but we do that for the sake of the future, the future of our free and our democratic country. If we are fighting for this kind of state, this kind of life where the principal values are freedom, democracy, and if we protect and defend that, how can I possibly be of a different opinion? Nobody would appreciate that among our people, and I wouldn't appreciate it myself. I don't think I'm ready for such a change. No, but we have to be serious about the strict vertical for security. Our country, we have to understand we have a serious situation, more serious than in Israel, that can be attacked any day. So with the specific vertical power, specific institutions which directly responsible for protection of people, everything should be very serious indeed. We cannot be liberal there, but otherwise our state is liberal, our nation is liberal. We appreciate freedom and we fight for it. You can see how much we can and how hard this fight is and how determined we are.
Пане президенте, дуже дякую за ваш час та все, що робите для України. My name is Anastasia.
Thank you very much for your time, Mr. President.
I'm an undergrad at Stanford. I'm also a reporter for the Stanford
Yeah.
Daily. Since February, both Ukrainians and Americans on campus have mobilized and participated in efforts to help Ukraine, from writing letters to Congress representatives to just collecting money to donating their time to work with NGOs helping Ukraine. Since then, institutionalized help kind of filled some of the existing gaps. So I was wondering, what are some of the areas that advocates on campus and beyond should prioritize in grassroots activism and direct help to Ukraine? Thank you.
Дуже дякую, Анастасія. Ви
Thank you
знаєте,
very much, Anastasia. You know, it is very important today to help Ukraine. And to be helped, we have to be listened to and heard. Thousands of kilometers, but nevertheless, we have the truthful information being communicated and going straight to human hearts. This is the most important thing for the people to know the truth of this war, the war ongoing. The crisis is not just a crisis, it comes in waves. And this is not just another crisis. This is a bloody war, a fierce war, a cruel war. The second army in the world are trying to take it away from us. So you have to communicate the truth, nothing but the truth.
повинно бути чути.
So your voice should be loud, should be vocal. And this is what we are expecting of you. People like you, Anastasia, these are modern people, educated one. And I believe you're not only a new generation, you're the generation of ambassadors of Ukraine. You would need to show what kind of people do we have live in our country, what people were born in Ukraine And it is to those people that you would need to support and assist so that those people would continue being born in Ukraine. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. President. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us today. My name is Christina Hill, and I'm a current master's student in the Russian, Eastern European, and Eurasian Studies program here. My question is something a little bit more personal. I was wondering, how does it feel from being an actor to now managing a war against one of the biggest militaries in the world?
Ну, мені здається, що це краще, ніж спочатку
Well,
бути.
It's much better than at first you are a KGB agent and then you become a president. In any case. And it's about a great, even the greatest responsibility. A great responsibility, that's what I felt. That's what I keep feeling. Whatever I've done in my life, I've always felt the responsibility. There is a result that it's necessary. There is a victory that we need, and you need to move forward. And the question, what have you done personally at your position? And now I have a very responsible position and a very responsible mission to consolidate my country, not to lose the independence. And I will try to be the best among others, among other presidents. And Ukraine has given me the chance to do so.
Thank you so much.
Пане президенте, мене звати
Mr.
Соломія.
President, my name is Solomia.
Я медична студентка
I'm
Стенфорду.
a medical student of Stanford.
Since the beginning of this invasion, over 400 healthcare facilities in Ukraine have been damaged or destroyed, and many Ukrainians have been displaced and disconnected from their healthcare providers. We, a team of medical students at Stanford and computer scientists, had hoped to remedy some of this disparity and thus created an initiative called Telehelp Ukraina. There we connect US-based physicians to Ukrainians in need by providing telehealth appointments and mental health support. Patients that we speak to daily are distressed, and many are away from their homes. And there are even many more that we haven't even reached yet. For initiatives like Telehelp Ukraina and many others, how can we best support Ukrainians? What strategies does your office recommend for us to best reach Ukrainians where they are? Thank you.
Дуже дякую, Соломія.
Thank you, Solomia. And today, there's so many aspects that should be covered with regards to medicine and medical support amidst the war. There's a lot of challenges, there's a lot of questions, and I'm sure that the experts like you or your colleagues from the medical department, I'm sure that there could be some modern answers found to the question. And the issue of telemedicine that you've mentioned, the telehealth project, well, this issue of telemedicine started to develop, and we had something like that in the Odessa region even before the full-scale aggression. I completely agree. This is the right and modern approaches that would help to IDPs and elderly people, because whenever they trust only to their nurses and doctors with whom they've had many years of relationship, and now because of the war they had to move, so they're facing with different environment, they can't find themselves, and this results in many challenges and problems. And surely after this conversation, we, with Mr. Makful, we have contacts, so we can take your contact details and we can get you in touch with our Minister of Health. So we are interested in any targeted programs that could be helpful, that could be providing assistance. And there's many other aspects that could be raised because of the war, there's many aspects that are brought to the table that you don't take into consideration during the peace time. And now there's a lot of programs that we're lacking about. It's like the lack of blood and the lack of oxygen in the body, particularly like in terms of psychological rehabilitation, what our soldiers fought and saw over the years of war. Now they feel that there is a need for support. It's a different story. There's this also a psychological support to civilians, and the civilians that you mentioned, the IDPs. There's also a need to help others, the IDPs who moved to the other cities of Ukraine. There is people who moved abroad and who are currently located in other countries without knowing the language. I mean, they're afraid sometimes to go out, to go to see a doctor. That is why using telemedicine or online medicine would be an opportunity for them. And after the war, I think it would be useful for you in your experience. After the war, Ukraine will have a new wave, definitely will. And there will be a need for rebuilding of the country. And at the same time, the military people will be returning from the war, and they would be trying to search for themselves, for their position. And it's very difficult because they're not used for the silence. They're not used for their relatives. I've seen people like that. And you don't know how to hug your relatives that you haven't seen for 3 months already, because you've already seen only the enemies for 3 months. So grateful to you, to this project. So let's share contact details. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. President. My name is Karin, and I'm an undergraduate here. And the whole world has united to stop the genocide in Ukraine, with the US now sending more than $54 billion in aid. And then there are the severe sanctions on Russia by the EU, the US, the UK that have cut like a double-edged sword. Now, do you think that this immense aid, financial or political, will one day influence the sovereignty and decisions of Ukraine as a payback? Should we be worried about this? And if so, does Ukraine have a plan to get out of this mess? Thank you.
Допомога, Керол, ви маєте на увазі?
By saying assistance, you're talking about financial, political, or in terms of weapons, or are you saying how sanctions against Russia are impacting Ukraine? Could you explain more the question?
Of course. I mean, all the financial aid, as in money that the US, the EU, the UK has sent to Ukraine, and then the sanctions they imposed on Russia have cut like a double-edged sword, for example, in rising prices in energy or in food. And do you think that this will one day come as a sort of like payback to Ukraine? Will Ukraine be under subtle Western influence from all this aid now?
Окей. Мені здається, щось з перекладом відбувається, тому що...
Maybe something's wrong with the interpretation. No, sanctions are not imposed against Ukraine. Sanctions are against Russia. I guess the interpreter is working for Russia, not Ukraine, because he keeps saying that the sanctions are imposed against Ukraine and not Russia. So that's why I couldn't understand for too long the question. So first, what sort of financial support the financial support is designed to, to survive this moment. It's not the financial support to develop our country. That's the deficit of our budget, which is something around 5 billion per month. This is a big money. And those money are spent for those people who are in need for help, the IDPs, the pensioners, and they're also spent for salary, because everything we are building, all the money that we have inside our country, we are giving those money to the military. We're spending the money only for the military who are paying with their lives. And of course, the country cannot live with that. In that way, we can only live like that during the war, but living like that in peace is impossible because the state has to develop. So that money is the support that I've mentioned to you, Carol. Speaking about sanctions, what sanctions have impact on? And Mr. McFall and our Andriy Yermak from the Office of the President and many other experts, they are currently working on the package of sanctions, and that we are proposing different leaders, including the US and the EU. We're proposing to consider those sanctions, and we are proposing them with the analysis, which sanctions are effective, which are not, which are truly impacting Russia, and so that there would be no sanctions that are only imposed to make Ukraine happy. That analysis is very important, but unfortunately, I have to say that the sanctions, they are very important, but there is ways that Russia is using to circumvent those sanctions. Why? Because there is no united, strong position of the world against the Russian aggression. Politically, some of the leaders are afraid the society will be pressing on them, because on the overall, all the nations supporting Ukraine, all the wise people, they could clearly understand where's the right and where is wrong, who's fighting against whom, at what territories the war is happening, who's taking lives, who's saving lives. All the people have clearly understood everything, because on the overall, the society who's ready not only to just consume information, but to analyze the information, the students, the scientists, so on and so forth, everyone understands where the truth is. So we clearly understand that people know everything, people put pressure on their leaders, and the leaders are afraid that the society will remove them out of power. And that's why they impose sanctions. But still, some of the sanctions are just not strong enough so that Russia would still able to circumvent them. It's important that the sanctions would be pressing hard against Russia, because sanctions is the right weapons against Russia. It's the weapons of the world that can be used against Russia. Sanctions is the weapon that is not taking the lives. It simply shows that you should not violate the international law. You should not violate the human rights, the sovereignty. You should not be picking up something that does not belong to you. And of course, you cannot take the lives of other people. That's why the tools are necessary. And I'm not sure if I heard and understood correctly the question, but living in this format, saying that we are only being provided with financial support, it's impossible. The economy of Ukraine has to work, and you need to understand that we are defending not only our values, because tomorrow Russia may approach the borders with the Baltic countries. We don't know where they will go next, because the distance is not protecting from chemical, biological, and nuclear weapons.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Zoe, and I'm a computer science student here at Stanford. And just like Sol, I'm a co-founder on the Telehelp Ukraine project. You took time out of your schedule to be with us today. Why do you think activism abroad is so important? And what can we do to best support Ukraine?
Дуже дякую за.
Thank you, Zoe. First of all, you know Ukraine. And it is understandable that you. Where are you from, by the way? Where were you born?
I was born in Hamburg, Germany. Yeah, I'm German Spanish.
Це не зовсім Україна. Да, я там був. Я кажу, що це
This is not exactly Ukraine, but I thought you were from Ukraine because you look Ukrainian by now.
Thank you.
Я не при чому. Вдячний.
It's not my fault. You have to thank your parents for that. What is important, Zoe, answering your question in earnest, for us to be heard, for us to be understood, people who are not inside this war, and indeed, I am happy that your countries, Germany and other European countries have no war. We are the only European country suffering from this, and the United States. We all cross our fingers when we hear from any tyrants or any authoritarian leaders that they can attack this or that country. We always cross our fingers to prevent this because we know what it means and how it is and how it feels. So you would understand that if you're not inside the war, inside this country at war, you cannot have this full appreciation of such a situation. I'm being frank with you. All of us here in Ukraine, and when the war we had just in the east of our country, in the Ukrainian Donbas, this is the same state, the same organism, but the east is 1,000 kilometers away from the capital. And even us, people living in Ukraine, just regular citizens living in the capital, we did not have the full, complete feel of that war, which was going on in the east of our country. It was only after the full-scale invasion, when the capital was besieged and encircled, and we had very slim chances for survival, even here in the capital. And when they bombarded the capital and Kharkiv, Odessa, the sunny Odessa region at sea, which is always positive and always for peace against any kind of war. But now everyone understands what the notion of war is. In the West, it is difficult to imagine when you are far away. And with your activism, your intellect, your dynamics, your education, with your knowledge and your interest in Ukraine, your caring for Ukraine, for what is happening in Ukraine, with your appreciation that this war, let me repeat, recognizes no distances. It can, God forbid, get closer to your native country. With people like you, we can herald to everyone that we have this common grief, like common happiness. The world is too small because of the technologies, the modern military equipment. With a cruise missile, you can cover thousands of miles and find your target and create a tragedy in any European city or town. So support us with your activism. It's extremely important for us just to remember that leaders of your countries, and when I say your countries, Zoe, I'm not talking in abstract terms. So leaders of specific countries should feel this pressure of the society. And it's only then that they will appreciate the pain and feel it with you, through you. It is very important. They should not have their heads in the clouds. They are not living in any kind of outer space. Reality sometimes is cruel, and the world can be cruel. And we in Ukraine have the same right to live as any other citizen of any other country. It's only your leaders that can be afraid of your societies, and you are helping us that way.
Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. President. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Divya Ganesan, and I'm an undergraduate studying international relations and computer science. My question for you is that during these times, there's darkness, there's a lot of struggle. I'm wondering what gives you hope and motivation and inspiration to keep going?
Дуже дякую.
Thank you very much for this question. Thank you, first of all, for the bright colors of you're wearing today. Very symbolic indeed. And you know, the most beautiful thing that happened to us is life. This is a big opportunity. This is a big chance to get to know the world, to express oneself in this world, to become special, and to give something to the world. And when I'm talking about something given to the world, let's be truthful and honest. When you give, you always want to take. It's a give and take relationship, because human beings are filled with energy and happiness when they are needed by someone, and their warmth is appreciated by someone, and the love is appreciated, and the energy is accepted. So I'm very happy. I'm very joyous that everything I can do is needed by Ukraine today, by our people. And I don't know just for how long that will last, but I am getting charged by Ukraine, from Ukraine and Ukrainians, and I'm charged by this energy, and I'm full of it. This is my energy, this is my hope, the result, the outcome. The outcome is just one thing: peace, victory, equal rights in our state of free people, people like you, just like you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here, Mr. President. My name is Callie Oburn, and I'm doing my master's in international policy here at Stanford. And before coming to Stanford, I had the pleasure to work with Aspen Kyiv when I was at the Aspen Institute. And they do such incredible programming on national identity and governance and justice. And so when you look towards the future, what role can organizations like Aspen Kyiv and the Aspen Institute play, especially in the reconstruction efforts in Ukraine?
Thank you very much for this question. Quite honestly, I can share with you, we have big projects for reconstruction. The most important, pivotal thing is our philosophy. We offered to different companies, different jurisdictions and municipalities to take patronage over specific provinces or communities, big municipalities or villages, amalgamated communities. This is very important to us, because when we were thinking about that program, we would appreciate that that was about exchange, not just cash, but exchange of energy, professionalism, knowledge, expertise, because that's the highest value. People with expertise, they are curious of the ideas for development of anything. And I'm talking about restoration or reconstruction of a whole state. This reconstruction is not just about construction or rebuilding the ruined cities and towns. This is about reconstructing the whole sectors, industries, because many people will be encouraged by the victory and enthusiastic, but there will be some people depressed because of the difficult circumstances. We have to find a place for them also, because in the times of war, they were heroes. They protected our sovereignty and our land. They defended us, every one of us. So that is why I think that you always are very much needed. We need you to reconstruct our state, to bring back not just the things we used to have. We have to promote ourselves to a new level. You visited Kyiv, you know the way. You can find your way. Come back, please.
Thank you so much.
So, Mr. President, you've been incredibly generous with your time. We've been with you for an hour. Could you take 2 more questions? 2?
Добре.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we're going to reverse the order. Right
Oh.
here, and we'll end with Kate over there. Please. Great to see you.
Thank you, Michael. Hello, Mr. President. My name is Olga. I'm from Russia. As a young Russian person who shares democratic values, freedom, and would like to see my home country develop in a different direction, every day I ask myself, did I do enough? And today, the Russian community abroad, we're working to build a network of support for Russian independent journalism. We're helping Ukrainian refugees who come here to the US. What do you expect me to do? What more should I do? Thank you.
Дякую, Ольга.
Thank you, Olga. Thank you for your question. You know,
Я думаю, щоб
I think
ви не втратили
that you have some relatives in Russia and friends in Russia, and as a Russian person, you wish for your state to hear you, to take heed of the people like you, and you're living in reality. It's very important because we know what the information campaign and the information space in which the Russian society is encapsulated. We know who is to be blamed for this information bubble or information mausoleum of a country where people are standing in the line to visit that dead body, that effigy. And it's like some people who will never know the truth, like in the occupied territories and the Donbass, 8 years changed a lot of things. It's a different information space, and 8 years ago they loved Ukraine, they were pro-Ukrainian, and now perhaps they are living in a different philosophy. So because of people like you, because of your friends, because for the Russians staying back in the home country, you are one of them. You are their friends and relatives. You see the truth, you get the knowledge in the United States, you can demonstrate the world which is bigger than Russia, which is bigger than Ukraine in any country for that matter. The world is big, and we have to remove the frontiers, open the borders, and bring the truth in with the knowledge, with convictions, with persuasion. And this is a mission for the leaders, for the people who sometimes, unfortunately, cannot see or hear the truth, to take no heed. And with years, we'll have more people like that. You can penetrate this wall. You can present the truth to them. perhaps in your social media, your accounts, the pages where you're registered as the Russian citizen, the Russian people read, because they do not read me anymore, I'm sure.
Власники
Well,
мавзолею зробили все,
I think the owners of Mausoleum made everything to deprive them of access to my pages. So educated people who were born in Russia, who lived in Russia, who would return with the wide understanding of the world, you have all the chances, all the chances, all the chances. Thank you.
Дякую.
Thank you.
So my apologies to everybody standing in line. You can stand there and maybe he'll answer more questions. But we've agreed to be together for 1 hour. We've passed that already, so this will probably be the last question.
Щиро вітаю вас, пане президенте.
I'm happy to welcome you, Mr. President. Greetings.
My name is Katerina. I will switch to English to make sure that everyone understands me in this audience. I'm here on behalf of Ukrainian Student Association at Stanford. And for the context, there are several people in this room who took time to fly back to Ukraine to help people on the ground. This quarter, I put my studies on pause, took leave of absence, not to regret that I didn't spend enough time trying to help my home. By the way, I'm from Dnipro, so we're literally neighbors. In your addresses to different groups of students, you said that when you were young, you had a feeling of wasted time in university. And this is a golden time when we need to be preparing for something. Now you are a global example of morale and leadership. What would you say your 20-year-old self? What advice would you give in terms of how students should spend their times while they're at university? Thank you.
Катерина з Дніпра.
Okay. Catherine from Dnieper.
Okay. First of all, you said when I. First of all, you said. What do you mean? I'm still.
We're missing some voice. We don't hear you.
Ви не чуєте, да?
Зараз я вас чую.
Now I can hear you.
Бачите, як тільки я захотів перейти на.
So whenever I wanted to turn to English, I was cut out. I guess that's the hint that my English is not that good. Understood.
Please,
Understood.
Mr. President, speak English. Go ahead.
Are you sure, Mark?
Yes.
Do you hear? Yeah. Oh. I'm happy. So, from the very beginning, you said that you are Katerina from Dnipro, and then you said that you switched to English for everybody to understand, to be understand. So now I will switch to English, but I'm not sure that everybody will understand what I said. But sometimes I want to have some practice and to speak in English, and speak English. And first of all, you said that I said that when I was young. Yes. What do you mean, Katerina? I'm still young. I think so. What I want just to say. now I will tell you some words. I think they are very important, and I will switch to Ukrainian. Катерина, ви знаєте,
Catherine, you know what? It's true. Someone is studying in universities, and someone is standing in line to the drafting stations and answering the calls for mobilization. Very young boys and girls, but primarily boys, very young one. And unfortunately, not all of them will see a chance to write a thesis, and not all of them will stay alive. And that's a terrible story. That's why I would like to wish to all the students, I would like to wish you a long and interesting life in what you're doing, and in science, in journalism, in art, whatever does what. I think this is the best days, years, and hours. So I'd like to wish all of you so that those would be the wonderful years for you, so that there would not be a sorrow as it was in our country. That is why I would like to sincerely wish you peace, and you just need to receive some sort of a pleasure. It's either you do that in the lectures or after the lectures, but you have to enjoy your life.
Дякую. Слава Україні.
Thank you, and glory to Ukraine.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thanks for being here. Slava Ukraina.
Героям слава. Thank you so much.
Glorious to hear.
For this great conversation. Thank you. Thank you so much.